Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about the North Node in astrology. Now, interestingly enough, many of you may know that have followed my channel for some time. I do have videos on the North Node in the signs and the houses and aspects that the North Node can be involved in. But unless I missed it, I don't have one on the meaning of the North Node. And it's very interesting too, because when I was trying to look up something for a friend the other day, what happened was I was trying to look up something connected with her specific North Node placements by sign and house. Of course, I had the videos on that. But I tried looking for one that was on just the basic meaning of the North Node. I did, but apparently I didn't do it unless I was oblivious, I overlooked it or something. But anyway, here we go. And it's funny because that person's North Node is actually conjunct my North Node. So I thought it's interesting that it's almost like friend of mine on Facebook basically unwittingly inspired me to do a video on the North Node. I have the North Node in Pisces in my 11th house. So, of course, that can manifest in a number of ways, but it was like she basically inspired me inadvertently, unwittingly, or what have you, to do something connected with the North Node. And in terms of, the North Node, in being in my 11th house, something with the esoteric could include, astrology, which is what this is going, which is what it's going to be about. And also another way that could manifest is something with the North Node in filmography, because the North Node is in I have the North Node in Pisces. That could be connected with filmography and bringing it out into the internet and through and connected, of course, with astrology. And of course, the 11th house is associated with the internet and astrology. But anyway, going to this North Node, the basic meaning of the North Node as far as natally, the North Node, of course, is what we're supposed is our future, the destiny, the mission, life purpose, where we're supposed to go this time around, basically. Now, if you're a believer in the past life thing, then what you're seeing is that the South Node, in contrast to the North Node, the North Node is symbolic, represents where we're going. Now, the South Node is what we're getting away from, but the thing, and it could be tied into overdeveloped attributes, characteristics, or abilities from the previous time around. Now, the thing about this, though, the North Node compared to the South Node, I don't say you necessarily need to eradicate all the energy of the South Node, but what you can do is incorporate it at times, at least a little bit, with the North Node energy. But the thing about it is the South Node energy is not necessarily all negative or adverse, but what it does is if you're emphasizing that South Node energy in that second part of your life where you're supposed to be accentuating, emphasizing the North Node, what it does is it could detract you from what your purpose is supposed to be, with your fulfillment, which of course corresponds with the North Node placement by sign and house. Now, the thing is, we're supposed to emphasize the North Node energy more so in that second part of our life, like maybe 30 and up, 35 and up, somewhere around there. With me, see if your North Node is intercepted in your natal chart, I think the way that could manifest and pan out, that could be a little bit of a delay. The energy may be suppressed to some degree, at least for some time, because like with me, I didn't start doing my astrology videos until I was 42. It was back in 2012. Some of you remember at the exact date. Actually, it was September 26, 2012, when I started my YouTube astrology channel. Of course, on that day, the transit sun was very close to my natal Uranus. Of course, that's shining the light of energy into something creative associated with astrology. So it's not a surprise that that was the timing, the way that worked out with me. But the point I'm making is the fact that I started that astrology channel, and I think a lot of that is tied into my North Node placement by sign and house. Started a little bit later, not at 30, not at 35, but 42 years old. Some of that may have been attributed, I believe, to the fact my North Node is intercepted in my chart. Now, the thing about this too is it's also at a critical degree at 4 degrees, which can make it more pronounced and more emphasized. With the North Node being in Pisces in the 11th house, I mean, it's important first. So when you look at the North Node in your chart, look at it by sign, then by house. Now the sign my North Node is in Pisces, so that future could be tied in to something connected with Pisces, which could be associated with the metaphysical, which could include astrology. Being in the 11th house, that could be tied into a very strong goal and aspiration. Or another way to perceive that is that my future, the destiny, the purpose, the second part of my life tied in to doing something with filmography, which could be associated with the North Node in Pisces, and doing that in connection with the internet, the esoteric, which could include astrology, and that could correspond with the 11th house. So no matter how you see it, it seems like it's very strongly the fact that I've been doing these videos, it's tied very strongly tied in to that North Node energy. Now, the fact is, I stated before that the South Node is what we're trying to get away from. The thing about it is, like, at least to some degree. Now, in my example, like with me, my South Node is in Virgo in the 5th house. So for me, like looking at that, that could indicate very strong, ability perhaps for analytical, intellectual amusement and enjoyment. I think a lot of that actually can play a role in what I do, like when I do my football videos. Sometimes I may be extrapolating data, and of course that could be Virgo related. The 5th house could be associated with sports and things we enjoy and like to do. And also the 5th house is connected with speculation, and then you have the Virgo energy, all that analysis on things that are speculative, in this case trying to predict the outcome of sports games. But the thing about it is, I think like when you look at the South Node and the North Node, again, as I stated before, you can incorporate some of that South Node energy with the North Node energy, but not to the point where you're being dominated by that South Node energy. Like an example, like in my case, like I could put the analytical ability for my South Node and being able in injecting that in detail-oriented energy into the North Node in Pisces in my astrology videos. So the thing about it is, it's not so much that you have to obliterate or eliminate all the South Node energy completely, but merely you're trying to get away from it strongly, and you may incorporate a little bit of it with the North Node energy, but the North Node again is what we're supposed to strongly accentuate and emphasize this time around, basically. And also, I mean, of course, it's important to look at the aspects that your North Node makes in your chart, because, of course, that could, I mean, it could impact it. It's not so much the basic meaning of the North Node, but it can show whether you have more flowing energy with it, or you have more obstructions, maybe delays or conflict because of it. Like in my case, my North Node in Pisces squares my moon in Gemini. And the thing about it is, well, the energy, you already wonder, well, how can that manifest in planet? Well, the thing about it is, when you're talking about the North Node in Pisces, that could be, very about being focused on the future, showing compassionate, self-sacrificing, altruistic energy. But when you have the moon in Gemini, it's not like Gemini energy can't show those qualities. But the moon in Gemini, I mean, the moon is what we're about, our unconscious, our, emotional needs, and really what we feel like. It could be about what we feel, maybe what we feel like doing, what we're at home with. And having that moon in Gemini being one of those me signs, it might be a little bit more egocentric, a little bit more self-centered, and more of the emotional need perhaps for just general activity and variety, which could take precedence over how others feel. So you understand where there would be more of a conflict with having the moon in Gemini, in my case, making the square to the North Node in Pisces. Now, the thing about it is that now I want to talk about one other thing with the North Node in astrology. If the North Node, say, in transit, a lot of times, like when you have the North Node in transit, whether you're having your node being hit by a planet, or the transit North Node is hitting something, or whether it's your house, a planet, or as far as looking at that, it could be about issues one may have to confront. And when you're talking about the North Node, like in transit, it shows what we could be moving toward. And then the opposite point, of course, is the South Node, what we could be getting away from. So like with me right now, I have the transit North Node in Cancer is in my second house. So this could be about a time where I maybe need to be nurturing my values, or putting or being directed toward maybe a home is something that I would value at this time. More about maybe showing dedication and devotion, unequivocal love toward the things that I own, toward my possessions, toward my own money that I may be generating. The fact that it's it had just passed my son, so I was concerned if maybe I had to confront some issues regarding maybe something of a physical nature, such as something with the chest, the breast, the stomach. But really, I was fortunate nothing did come of that. But the fact is now, at this time, going to the South Node in transit, of course, that means the South Node in transit right now for me. This transit South Node is in Capricorn in the 8th house. So it could be about going away from maybe a situation where it could be a limitation in a shared resources situation, or maybe a limitation in moral, emotional support, or some kind of or something that was causing maybe some certain despondency in some 8th house area. Maybe it was in connection with somebody that may have constantly needed my something from me, whether it was moral or emotional support. Or this could be because the South Node again could be about what we're trying to go away from, or it could be going away from limitations in moral, emotional, monetary support, not really thinking, not really being overly concerned with that at this point, and just maybe now with the North Node transit, North Node Cancer in my second house, being more focused on the future of my own finances and nurturing that, rather than because of the transit South Node Capricorn in the 8th, going away from a limiting situation that could be connected with the shared resources situation, or depressing shared resources scenario being in Capricorn. But anyway, so hold on a moment, people, and get something to drink for a moment. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, so another thing too is that when you have like you're talking about, say, in Synastry, if you have like someone's if a North Node, somebody is by somebody's their sun, moon, or ascendant, it's conjunct, it could show that that the future, that person that's got the ascendant, moon, or sun, that person could play an integral role in your future, perhaps Of course, if it's by the sun, it could be attaining the basic wants, the moon, the emotional needs. And the ascendant could simply be the development of just really the natural, qualities that are being expressed outwardly by the person. It could be connected with some interest as well, because people that have a certain ascendant could obviously be very proficient and good at the things associated with that rising sign or ascendant. Somebody with a Gemini ascendant obviously could be very mercurial, very versatile. They could do many different things, could be very good at things connected with dexterity, such as auto refrigeration mechanics. The ascendant also is connected with new beginnings. So if you have somebody in that example that's got their North Node in Gemini, conjunct the other person, Gemini ascendant, well, that person could play, might really be, instrumental in that ascendant. And the ascendant person actually could be instrumental in that, as far as that person that has the that North Node placement. But I think what it comes down to is that person with the North Node placement might be able to further that person's that Gemini rising person's new beginnings. But the thing about it is that the ascendant person could also, I think, play a very strong role in that person's future, and it would be, something, of course, Gemini related, since that person in that example would have a Gemini ascendant. So anyway, and also remember, the ascendant is also about the appearance as well. So that could actually, the North Node person might play some strong role in that person's their general outlook and their appearance, I think, as well. But the thing about it too is that when you look at certain things, and as far as physically, the North Node, I think, can play a role in somebody's, like, their appearance. You look at if the North Node is in the first house, especially if it conjuncts the ascendant, the person may actually be taller than average. And I think it has to do with the fact that the North Node is like, you're talking about going further or going upward. Maybe like when you have the North Node by the first house cusp or in the first house, that person may be taller than average because of that. Renowned NFL quarterback Tom Brady, he has the North Node in the first house conjunct his ascendant, and of course he's taller than average. It was interesting. I was looking at a Tony Robbins chart. He's a prolific motivational guru. And he has I thought maybe he might have had Uranus or the North Node by his first house cusp. But what I noticed that with Tony Robbins, I just noticed, though, that he has the North Node, it looked like it's in Virgo, over in his 12th house, and perhaps how that manifests with him. The 12th house, of course, is about, could be connected with people that are less fortunate than ourselves. So I think that shows that energy might manifest with him as a lot of hard work in terms of helping others help themselves, empowering people that have certain limitations, or in situations connected with self-sabotage, and seeing those fine details in those people, and being able to help those people in the process. So I think that's how it might pan out with, like, Tony, as far as Tony Robbins, how it works with him. But anyways, really not much more to say about this. It's just it's a simple fact. Another thing, well, what I wanted to say too is going over, to the North Node again, and going back to an in transit. Sadly, recently, some of you may have heard that legendary actor Kirk Douglas died in his home. He was like 102 or 103 years old. It could be something to what happened was he had transit North Node in Cancer very close to his natal Pluto, and he did die in his home. And as I stated before, the North Node in transit can be connected with issues one may have to confront. He also had, sadly, at the time, transit Pluto close to his own natal North Node in the 12th house of endings in depressing Capricorn, sadly, and transit Pluto is not far from his ascendant. Of course, the ascendant could be connected with the physical body. So anyway, yeah, the thing about it though is, and something to keep in mind too, when you're talking about, the North Node in astrology, it's not always going to be, fun and bed of roses, because again, like I stated, a lot of it, whether you're able to attain what you want with the North Node easy, or whether it's hard. A lot of it can be predicated and dependent on aspects that are made to points in your chart, and whether there's a lot of conflict with it or not. The thing about it is, the thing too, when you look at it, it could even if you have a lot of flowing aspects to your North Node in your chart, it doesn't mean you're not going to encounter any difficulties or tests or some trials associated with any challenges. Because like in my case, you got to understand the North Node in Pisces and me being directed toward the metaphysical, which includes astrology and doing the videos associated with it. The thing about it is, there's always going to be backlash. There's going to be people that are going to denigrate me for what I do and say, for example, what I'm doing is blasphemous, and or it's contradicting something biblically, and things of that nature. So you have to remember that that's part of the North Node process, is that there may be some obstructions and challenges in connection with it. But when you're pursuing something that you're supposed to fulfill, it generally isn't going to be completely easy, and you may often get some difficulty in attaining it with some certain roadblocks, regardless of aspects to it in your chart. So anyway, people, oh, and one more thing, if your North Node is conjunct another person's North Node, it can indicate that your destinies may actually be very inextricably interwound. I mean, because you're talking about one's future may be tied in very strongly with the others, and both people might impact the other person's future very strongly, and their futures may wind up being together, or they're going to follow a similar, or they're, like I said, they're just very inextricably interwound. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.